And we are back. This is Regionally Speaking. I'm your host, Steve Walsh. Northwest Indiana has seen a proliferation of craft breweries, from the mighty Three Floyds in Munster to Crown Brewery, Shoreline, and Figure 8 out in Valparaiso. Our next guest wants to add Gary to the list. 18th Street Brewery is the brainchild of a group of friends who are brewing right now in Chicago. They have at least some moral support from the Three Floyds crew. To talk about it, we have with us the founder and head brewer, Drew Frocks. Drew, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so so tell me a little bit about yourself. Where are you from, and where did you get this idea to start brewing in Gary?
Yeah, I'm originally born and raised in Chicago. I grew up in Humboldt Park in Chicago. And I've always been an avid home brewer. So I focused on home brewing for a latter part of 3 years. And I decided I wanted to go into the professional environment of brewing. Looking at every area of Chicago, my first original thought was Gary. I live in Gary. My kids went to school in Northwest Indiana. And looking at the economic structure of Gary, I thought it would be a perfect location for a brewery.
You don't see a lot of folks that grew up in Chicago that moved down. Well, you don't see folks that moved down to Northwest Indiana in general from Chicago. What made you decide to locate here in Gary?
It was similarly close to my roots in Humboldt Park. Really, I love the community aspect of growing up in Chicago. I think Gary also has a great community of people as well, and I think that's the big misconception that most people have when it comes to Gary. But I'm proud to live in Gary. I'm proud to be a part of the community, and once again, I think it's a renaissance that we see and that we believe in for the community and the city of Gary, as well as Northwest Indiana.
All right, before we even get into where it would be and all that good stuff, give me your bona fides on brewing. You said you started off doing home brew, but that's not what you're doing now. You're doing a professional craft brew right now, right?
That's correct. Actually, I'm one of the brewers over at Pipeworks Brewing Company in Chicago, which is located in an area which I grew up in. I've been blessed to have the opportunity from BJ, who is the head brewer at Pipeworks, and Garrett and Scotty to have an opportunity to come in and brew with them. And that transition from a home brewer to a professional brewer was almost seamless. It was more of a troubleshooting and cellaring side of the brewing, which I didn't have a lot of knowledge on.
For those who don't know, how big has this market become over the last few years?
It's huge. I think the Chicago market alone, projected breweries this year that will be opening up, is around 25 new breweries in Chicago.
Okay.
And I know in Northwest Indiana, we're slated to have an additional 3 to 5 breweries opening up. And it's a huge market, and I think you're going to see that transformation continue at least for the next 5 or 8 years.
People say it's the new wine. Everybody was drinking wine. Now they want like really, really good beer.
It is the new terroir of wine.
There you go.
And I think the essence of craft beer allows you to continue to be so much more creative than wine. And I think pushing the envelope with so many different ingredients, and you'll see, as you've seen in the past couple of years, multiple collaborations between other breweries from Chicago, Europe, and throughout the country.
So the way this is going, you're not just working for the brew pub in Chicago. They actually give you a little bit of time. You're eking out a little space, and you have your own brew going here at this point.
Right. My situation with Pipeworks, it's a great one. As I said, I'm one of the brewers there, and they see the potential, and they see and they care about 18th Street Brewery as well as myself. So they will be the contract brewer that we've selected to go with to brew, at least one beer a month for us until we continue our search for a permanent home here in Northwest Indiana and in Gary. It's not a brew pub. They are a small brewery with about 6 7-barrel tanks and a 4-barrel brew house. and they're expanding as we speak. In April, they'll go through a massive expansion, new brew house, and additional fermenters as well.
So do you want to do the brew pub in Gary, or are you talking about you want to brew it on site and distribute it to bars and restaurants in the area?
No, our plan is different from most people who jump into the craft beer scene. We are strictly looking at a tap room for Gary, which will allow us to continue to grow and solely focus on being creative, but also focused on bringing great fresh local beer to the community. A brew pub with something that we will look down within our 5-year business plan, but solely right now our focus is a tap room. And a tap room is essentially where you would come in, enjoy a pint that we created, but also you're able to take a few growlers home with you, or bullets, or a few bottles from our bottle shop. And that keeps us small, and it keeps us not having to bite off more than we can chew and continue to grow.
All right, so you're not going to have some of these places, and I live in Valpo. I know Figure 8 pretty well,
Yep.
And they started out basically as a tap room. You had some stools there, no food or anything. Now they've expanded downtown. You can go in there, have a good time, live music and all that. So you want to start with that small, get it going, build the following, and then you'll start looking at maybe doing the restaurant and all that stuff.
Absolutely. The brew pub side of things. Actually, it's a little bit more complicated, different food licenses that you'd have to have. And what we're going to do with the tap room is really reach out to the community. Miller Bakery Cafe is opening back up, which we're really excited about. We will partner with them. We'll also partner with Miller Pizza, whom I'm a big fan of. We'll partner with restaurants in the area to bring in food to the tap room so that way there is something for people to obviously eat. As we continue to grow, we'll look down the road at providing food, but mainly the focus is definitely the tap room, and that would give us so much more room to grow at a nice rate without having to focus and concern ourselves with the food portion of or brew pub.
Yeah, that adds a lot to the equation. So, you've gotten some press in the beer blogs. You've got a campaign going on Kickstarter, which is like a social media site that allows you to crowdsource funding. People kind of watch a video, then they can donate to your cause. You've got a goal of $12,000. You've raised about $8,000, so you're well on your way. How close are you to really making this happen?
Our goal is really to have the tap room up and running by August. The Kickstarter campaign is really to fund the contract brewing side of things and really allow us to put bottles on the shelves in the Chicago market. But our ultimate goal, as I said, Steve, is really to get the tap room up and running as quickly as possible, because once again, that's where we're going to set the tone for 18th Street Brewery by being in our own community, but also having a presence in Chicago. It's crucial. And I think the tap room, as you see in Three Floyds, majority of their customers drive down from Illinois or Michigan and further into Northwest Indiana. So we want to be the second point of destination for craft beer lovers. And I think you have to drive through Indiana to get to Shoreline. You have to drive through Indiana to get to Gary, to get to Figure 8.
Right.
So now we have that central hub, and we'll continue the growth of craft beer in Northwest Indiana.
And that was one of my questions. Is this something that you want to do for the local community, add a little local flavor just to the city, add to the dynamism there? Or is this something where, you're trying to bring in those folks from outside, the folks with the beards with the no mustache and, the skinny jeans and everything, the kind of hipster folks they're into craft beer, and bringing them, have them drop some money, employ a few people, and, do it that way? Are you really focused in on, what does the best beer Gary want, or do you want to be a tourism draw?
No, it's both. We want the best beer for the Northwest Indiana community. Okay. Also, the draw would increase the tourism to not just Gary, but Northwest Indiana. Now there's a roadmap that we've created for breweries such as Chicago. You look at Revolution Brewing, of how they turned around Logan Square. You look at what Gabe has done with Half Acre and their beautiful new tap room, up on the north side of Chicago. And even Spiteful Brewing, who has 700 square feet, but they're working within their means, and I think that really draws people to the community, and I think that's what's crucial and important for us.
Now, you've already reached out to some of these retailers, some of these restaurants, and they're saying to you that they're going to take this beer once you get it to them?
Absolutely. Miller Pizza has been really one of our biggest supporters, and we today have a meeting with the Miller Business Association. Once again, they invited us down to lunch today to talk about how they can help. And the city of Gary has been very enthusiastic. So we want to really outline a plan where, once again, we utilize everyone in the community and help build that relationship.
I'm just looking at some of the press you've gotten, and you said you tried this a while ago, and you went to Gary, and there wasn't a lot of enthusiasm. You're saying now there is. I mean, what was the initial reception like?
Well, we're talking about the old administration, and this was partially 2 years ago. I walked into City Hall in the zoning and told them what we were looking to do, and the person at the counter was like, absolutely not.
What was the concern?
The concern was, at that particular time, the test batch facility that we had built was that you're in a residential area, you're not in a commercial area. And we tried to show them how some of the smaller nano breweries have started that weren't in a commercial area, and they just weren't having it, which left a sour taste in my mouth. But I knew that we would continue to focus, and I knew I would continue to focus on.
So you hit a roadblock, but then you came back around. This time around, I guess you're saying the new administration, they liked the idea. They knew what you were talking about, and they went for it.
Absolutely. I got a phone call from City Hall. Apparently, two of the individuals, one working in zoning and one working in, I believe, urban planning, had saw the Kickstarter video and called me and said, hey, we want to meet.
Okay.
And so we met at Miller Pizza, and once again, they were very enthusiastic. And it was kind of nice to sit down and talk with two beer geeks from City Hall. So it's kind of nice.
So now they're coming to you and saying, yeah, you guys got to get this thing done. 18th Street, is it going to be on 18th Street? Is that where that comes from?
No, not at all. 18th Street comes from 18th Street in Pilsen in Chicago.
Okay.
And I love that area. It's a very culturally diverse area. Reminds me, once again, of Humboldt Park, where there's so many facets of cultures. And looking at how they start small businesses, that name really stuck with me. And I really want to pay homage to the hardworking folks at 18th Street.
No Broadway Brewery? That, I think, would work
we have a few names of beers that we will attach to some beers and really make it our own in Gary.
All right, so you plan to get up and running in August if you can. We'll start seeing in some of the restaurants in Gary and kind of move out from there.
Yep.
So we're going to check back with you when this all comes together. Maybe even get some beer when that all comes about. I'm not sure what the regulations are on drinking it on air, but we'll at least sample it to find out how good it is. But right now, this has been Drew Fox, who is the founder and head brewer of 18th Street Brewery. They want to open up in the city of Gary. Drew, thank you so much for being on.
Thanks for having us.